Yeah, let's push out our hemorrhoids. Just kidding. No, we're not. We're talking about the roids here. That's why I was just being funny. Without further ado, here we are once again on Shameless Sex, interviewing another lovely human, Dr. Meredith Brezinski. Did I say it right?
Yes.
All right. PT, DPT. We'll figure out what all those things mean.
I know what DP is, but I need to know what DPT is.
Oh, I don't think that's what she's referring to.
I know it's not.
You're nasty, nasty girl. And we also talked about this in the bio. So you've already heard a little bit about Dr. Meredith. And so we're really focusing on painful sex, hemorrhoids. We've had a lot of questions. April, you said that you've had a number of friends actually asking about this. And while we've had little bits and pieces discussed in various episodes, we really haven't done a deep dive into this. And it won't just be about hemorrhoids, because painful sex is really common for all bits, but especially vulva-owning individuals. So before we dive into all that, Doctor, should we go with Meredith? Dr. Meredith?
Yeah, just
Dr.
Meredith.
B. Can we call you Mayor?
Yeah. Hey, Mayor.
Hey, Mayor.
She's like,
All right.
nope, except that one.
So, Dr. Mayor, can you tell our listeners how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
Absolutely. So I became a physical therapist about 6 years ago now, primarily because my grandmother had a stroke and I got to watch her go through all of her rehab. And the PTs were just the ones that were there. They actually addressed her goals and really, really helped her. But then I, on a whim, took a pelvic floor course because there were 2 providers in my clinic and the other girl said, heck no, I'm not doing that. And I was like, I'll try it. I'll see. I'll give it a go. And I went to my first pelvic floor course and came back and was both so amazed, but also so frustrated that people don't have this information. I was like, how am I almost 30 years old and I've never been taught how to poop? I didn't know what my poop was supposed to look like. I just thought sex could be painful and that's fine. So I left the course just feeling like I needed to share this with the world because people don't need to live in pain. They don't need to be ashamed of their sexuality. And so I have been working ever since trying to just spread the word about the importance of pelvic health care and try to make it more of a normal conversation because it really should be.
I like how poop already found its way in.
Yeah, I'm always talking about poop. Yeah.
But everyone poops. It's like, oh my God.
It does happen.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's not a sexy topic when we talk about painful sex or hemorrhoids or shit. However, it's important because our bodily processes, the way our body functions, and learning the tools that could help you mitigate what's happening in your body so you can have better sex, you can have less pain in your sex, you can figure out how to navigate hemorrhoids in sex is so important. So this topic it's not sexy right now. It will become sexy. So stay tuned. And it can affect you at any point in your life. That's the thing. You might be listening and feel like right now it's not a thing for you. And for me, painful sex hasn't been a thing. I haven't had hemorrhoids. I also do shit like hell other humans. So that's important. But pelvic floor health is an ongoing thing and it's fluid and it's changing. So this is why it's incredible to have you talk about this topic on our show. So people that are experiencing pain during sex, let's go to this note. Let's talk about actual penetrative sex where a vulva owner is experiencing pain during penetration. And whether it's a penis, a dildo, doesn't matter. A finger, they're experiencing pain during penetrative sex. What are some of the most common causes of this thing?
Absolutely. That is a great question. So there can be a wide variety of pelvic floor dysfunctions where people will get diagnoses with vulvodynia, vaginismus. There's a lot of words out there. But what I like to explain to people just in the simplest form is that if you're experiencing any pain with insertion of anything, whether it's a tampon, whether it's a cup, whether it's a dildo, whether it's a penis, that's not what's supposed to be happening. And we can really dive into, is the pain more superficial? Because that gives us more of an idea of, is it more the first layer of the pelvic floor? If it's deeper pain, then that gives us an idea of, is it just partner's anatomy and your anatomy doesn't quite match up? So there's also tools for that. And so I think understanding that pain should not occur with sex unless that's what you're into, which is awesome too. But if you're having unwanted pain during sex, whether there's any physical sensation with that, we should see a pelvic floor PT. Pain is such a complex beast. It's a brain, neuroscience. There's so much that we could go into when we think about pain. So we work with other providers like counselors and therapists and mental health specialists to help with that side of things too. I'm not a mental health specialist. I see one, I don't claim to be, but we work with that part of the body because it's such a vulnerable area. So just understanding that no pain is normal unless you are choosing that choice. And any physical pain can benefit from seeing a pelvic PT, getting an idea of what it looks like. And the other thing that I would say is that people get really weird about pelvic PT because they're like, she's going to touch my vagina. They're just so scared. But the truth is that I have clients who've experienced trauma who they're just not comfortable with that, whether it's their culture, whatever it is. And so I can teach them the tools to do it independently. I don't need to do an internal check if that's not right for the person. And a good quality pelvic PT will say the same thing. So just make sure that you're finding someone that aligns with your values, whatever they are, and find someone who understands that pain shouldn't be part of the process. I think we're really trained, especially as vulva owners, like as soon as we have our cycle, that it's supposed to be painful. We're supposed to like miss school and sleep on the couch for days. And so of course you're not surprised when you stick a tampon in and it hurts, but it shouldn't. We can use a little Uber Lube on the tampon.
Yeah, Uber Lube.
Yeah, I've got my little bottle back here.
Oh, nice. Oh, girl, if you ever need more, just let me know. We'll send you a plethora of it. We will forever be your sponsor.
Uber Lube.
Yeah.
I get so much. We just filled a piñata with it.
Oh my God. See, everyone, it's that good.
Yes. It's that good. I think that just understanding that there's positional changes we can do. When I teach younger people how to insert a tampon for the first time, I have them do like a Captain Morgan stance because it just allows the pelvic floor to be more relaxed versus that weird like ogre thing we do on the toilet where we're like bent over and like, it's just, there's easier ways to do things. So I'm
what
all
is
about
a Captain Morgan stance?
It's the leg up, like the pirate with the leg up. Oh my
like
God.
that.
I thought that was old Blackbeard stance.
No, well, probably inspired by that. It's so funny when Meredith said that, I actually thought of you, but actually April's thing is release the Kraken, which is a different type of rum, but she'd be like, release the Kraken.
The Kraken stance.
But instead we're talking about like an actual penetrative insertion position inspired by a rum called Captain Morgan's, which is awesome. It makes sense.
He probably was a real captain.
I hope so. And he probably knew a lot about how to penetrate in the right way.
And how to put a tampoon in.
in the right position.
April calls it a tampoon, which makes sense with what you're saying.
It's like throw your tampoon, like he was whaling and threw his harpoon at a whale, which I don't condone, by the way. Back in the day, I wasn't there to condone whaling.
Super
but
sexy.
Nowadays, when you throw a tampoon up your vagina, it's like tampooning.
Oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which in itself causes, we're talking about painful sex, right? And painful sex can come from so many different things like sexual trauma, non-consensual acts of sexual violence. Also just going to the gynecologist and having them put on some nasty jelly and,
childbirth
gently,
too.
Shoving in the speculum, childbirth, the ways we are putting in things in our own bodies, not advocating for our bodies. And as I say this, I want to also let the penis owners know, y'all have your own version of this too. This isn't just vulva owners are the ones that are having all of the pelvic floor issues. So I guess that'll be a question for you. And I have another question after that question, but do you also work with penis owners too?
Absolutely. Yeah. So most pelvic floor PTs are trained to work with all genders. We all have a pelvic floor. It's exactly the same. It's just arranged in different ways. We even have muscles that are called the exact same thing. So I think helping people understand that everyone has this. So it's not a pregnancy issue. It's not, you don't have to have a baby to have pelvic floor issues. And also that in order to have a happy, healthy pelvic floor, no matter what gender you are, it needs to be able to relax and lengthen with sex, poop, pee, and babies. So whether things are coming out or whether things are going in, your pelvic floor has to lengthen and relax. But unfortunately, our society teaches us that your pelvic floor should be tight and strong and perfect and perky or whatever. Tight is the word that people ask me. They're like, I just had a baby. I don't feel like it's as tight as it was before. But if I assess a tight pelvic floor in terms of true hypertonicity of the musculature, that's a problem, And so the way I think about the pelvic floor is like a trampoline. Diaphragm is a trampoline on top. Pelvic floor is a trampoline on the bottom. We need them to both move up and down. You can think of it like an elevator. People have different, cues for it. But I think just understanding that your pelvic floor should move. And if you're able to relax your pelvic floor all the way, then your Kegel is going to be 10 times as strong because you're going to be able to lift it up all the way. So when I assess somebody who has a tight, dysfunctional pelvic floor, they can squeeze me because they practiced Kegels at a stoplight like a million times. They're just like squeezing. So they can squeeze, but there's no actual range of motion change. They're just squeezing. And so it's kind of like if you just held your arm like this all day, it's like, then you wouldn't really have a strong bicep. You would just have a weird arm. So we need our pelvic floor to both lengthen and contract in order for us to have a strong, tight, healthy, happy. So I think tight's just a weird word, but healthy, happy pelvic floor can both go down and come up.
I think tight was designed for the patriarchy. Sorry, haters who hate when we say that, but just designed. Let's get rid of that. Just,
like a toiga,
like a penis wanting to feel like really well gripped around. If it's not, then there's something wrong with the vulva and not with the penis.
Right.
Like this is a mutual discussion, conversation, experience. And yeah, there's different bodies and different shapes and sizes. And Susan Bratton used to say that, like, you have a really big cock. Maybe you're not supposed to be with someone who has a really tight pussy.
And that's what Dr. Meredith was speaking to anatomy. Sometimes the anatomy alignment, the anatomical alignment between two bodies may not be specifically designed to be within each other. I've had that experience myself where a cock was just too large for my vagina. Not that it was too tight. My vagina is not too shallow, but for that particular cock, it just was not the right size. Sex toys. I could say the same thing to some sex toys. Where I'm like, no, that's not meant for my body.
Too much.
For penis owners, if that is an issue that you're having with partners, have you guys heard of the O-nut?
Yes. Yeah. It's
so
that little spongy thing that goes on the base of the cock. Yeah.
It's like, it looks kind of like a cock ring, but it's not designed to be like that. It's meant to and there's different levels, but basically you can just put it on the base of your penis so that you're not inserting as deep for your partner. And I've had a lot of patients who've used them and they don't, like, neither the penis owner or the vulva owner reports less satisfaction, because you're still, if we think about the anatomy of the penis, like the sensation and the, all the nerves are at the top. So we're not necessarily missing out if we're not getting all the way, to the base.
That's a newer invention, by the way, because when I was having sex with this large penis owner, that didn't exist. And I thought about that. So great recommendation.
It's such a great thing. Yeah.
It completely is. And it's stackable. So you can kind of choose, as you mentioned,
exactly
what the amount you want inserted.
There's a possible chance, I'm not finding out for sure, but we might have it at purepleasureshop.com, which is the sex shop I own with my mom. And if we don't, we will. We'll get it there. So go check out purepleasureshop.com. Use coupon code Shameless Sex. You get 15% off. And hopefully we have the O-nut. And I think is it O-H and then N-U-T?
O-H nut. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And if not, we'll get it in there. And otherwise we have all the other toys you want too. But I've heard really, really great things about that. So So on that same note, because we're talking, and this could be for vulva owners, penis owners, etc. So obviously what would be really nice is I'm having some issues. Let me go see a pelvic floor therapist. And also for some people that the accessibility might be a thing, scheduling, finances, etc. So while we still want to advocate for that, and we'll tell everyone at the end of how to find you and how to pursue that work. But what are some other things that people can do right now, like applicable tools if they're experiencing painful sex? And we'll get to the hemorrhoid thing after this, but more so about like the painful penetration stuff, whether it's penises or vulvas or all the in-betweens.
Absolutely. So, number one, for any sexual encounter, I want people using lubrication. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is that, it's going to protect the vaginal mucosa. It's going to make the experience more enjoyable for everyone. Lubrication is great. And so finding a good lubrication is going to help everybody in the situation. And I really enjoy and I encourage people to be able to use it every time, because then if you're not feeling as excited or your lubrication is not on par with your excitement, then it just makes it easier for you to be able to have it there every time. It's just part of the routine. It's not a new thing that you're adding when things are not working as well as you want them to. So good lube. Uber Lube is probably my all-time favorite. Slippery Stuff is a water-based lube that I like. And then Go Love CBD is a CBD lube that I encourage patients to use a lot, because sometimes, especially after childbirth or any trauma, they'll have just one area that's like super sensitive. And because of all of the nerves in the pelvic floor, it's just very, very sensitive and all of that. So we can put just a little bit of that on there and then use Uber Lube for the rest. It's a little bit pricier because it's a CBD lube, but you don't need a lot to have a good experience. So good lube is all-time number one. The second thing that I like to tell people is you really have to be in kind of a relaxed, both physical position, but also a mindset. You have to be in a place where you can be ready for that. And so, especially I work with a lot of parents because I work with a lot of moms, and I have them do something as simple as like put a pair of earrings in, or like put a dress on, or just switch out of being, caregiver all day long. Do one thing that's about you. It has nothing to do with your partner. You're not putting on your partner's favorite lingerie or, your whatever. You're doing something for you that feels really good. You're like, okay, when I put these earrings on, like, here I am. And so you're doing that. And that really, really helps get your mindset in the right place. Music, whatever, candles, like there's a lot of options. Number 3 would be position. So if your body is like having to hold itself in like a really awkward flamingo pose, you're not going to be able to relax your pelvic floor. If your butt is working, it's really hard to relax your pelvic floor. So I encourage people, especially if they're, getting back into it after having a painful experience, to go really slow, treat it like an adventure, not a destination. So there's no actual expectation of orgasm for either partner. We're just kind of like going for a trip and we're going to see where we land up. Then positioning with pillows. So using support pillows, you can just use your own pillows in your bed, being in a spread eagle position with your, like a butterfly. If your adductor, your groin muscles are really tight, your pelvic floor is not going to relax like that. And I show people that all the time on my table because we'll be doing an internal exam and they're like holding their leg up and it's like starting to shake. And I'm like, okay, relax your leg. And their pelvic floor is like, thank you. So just knowing that everything is connected. The other thing I teach partners to do is I will have them put their hands on their partner's belly. So say they're having like some front pelvic floor pain or like hurts in the front. I'll have them put their hands on the partner's belly, and the partner could, like the person could do that themselves too, but just kind of push the belly down, just push the skin down towards the pelvic floor. And that just slacks those tissues, that fascia, so that we can get more movement lower. You can do the same thing with your groin muscles. Sometimes just deep pressure feels really good. So I'll have people like really hold the back of their partner's back. But there's not a single patient I've treated with painful intercourse where I don't have a session with the partner and the patient, because the patient needs to know that it's not their fault. It's not their burden to carry. Sex takes, well, not always takes 2, but in this case,
sometimes 3, 4, 5, who knows?
Exactly. And so, we need it to be a joint thing that they're working on together. And that often lifts such a burden off the person that's in front of me that they're like, thank you for giving me permission to share this load, because this is really hard. Like it sucks to have painful sex. But if you can find a provider that's going to work with you guys together, or just you, if your goal is to have painful sex and you don't have a partner, working with you to understand your own anatomy, to understand your own body, what works for you, that can make all the difference. So there's lots of touch that we can do, but deep pressure is really calming to our nervous system. So sometimes that in of itself can really help the pelvic floor calm down.
And if you all want to check out those pillows, the Liberator pillows too, also at purepleasureshop.com. Yeah, the wedge and the ramp. And
Absolutely.
you can use regular pillows at home too, but I love my ramp.
I want to move into hemorrhoids for sure. And before we get to hemorrhoids, because this is a question that can pertain to a lot of people, folks out there, we've been talking a lot about tightness, and that's important because I've had a lot of friends, and I've been in the sex toy industry for many years, and I used to see the value in Kegel balls and putting those in. However, what happens is a lot of folks don't realize that there's almost like this, it's almost like a spasm that your pelvic floor is doing from squeezing so much. And the pelvic floor balls, those Kegel balls, aren't what you need. But when you are having, and I don't want to say the pelvic floor is weaker. Let's say the pelvic floor is weaker. That particular situation, you can benefit from using different elements like Kegel balls, right? Doctor, you're the expert. So I want to check in with you on this. So my question is, for those folks that aren't experiencing, maybe their sex isn't painful, however, they're getting incontinence, leaky bladder, or they're sneezing and peeing, or their pussy has changed a little bit. And this could also go for penis owners, depending on their circumstances. Would you recommend seeing a pelvic floor specialist as well, and then perhaps using elements like the Kegel balls that are out there, or are there other avenues that they could explore as well?
Absolutely. So it's really hard to know what someone's pelvic floor is doing without an assessment. People ask me all the time, they're like, well, what do you think? And it's like, well, I can assume based on this information you're giving me, but I am a believer and a practitioner that needs to check, like when you have strep throat, they do a test like that. We're doing the same thing. So I really believe that anyone who has leakage, let's just say bowel, bladder, sexual dysfunction, whether it's pain, whether it's leakage, whether it's, sometimes people pee during sex and they're like, what is that? Okay. Am I supposed to do that? Am I not? If they're having any issue like that, seeing a pelvic floor PT will just allow you to get an assessment and understanding, because what we used to think was that incontinence only happened when things were like really loose and stretched out. But 95% of the people that I treat with incontinence are too hypertonic. So they're too tight and they can't relax. So if a muscle, you can imagine if my bicep was like stuck like this, then you try to have me carry a box and I'm like, it's so tired. It's been working all day long. It's exhausted. And we just also have a length strength relationship with musculature. So if it can't relax fully, it's not going to be able to contract fully. And so then you get that big pressure sensation of a cough or a sneeze or a laugh or a jump, and your pelvic floor fails because it's like, I'm freaking tired, lady. Stop doing things to me. And the one thing I'll say about, and this is more female identifying people, but it does happen with other people as well. But when we're trying to squeeze our tummies in and stuck our butts in and like clench our butt and look perfect all the time, our pelvic floor is turned on all day long when it doesn't need to be. And so then we cough, sneeze, jump, laugh, try trampoline, and we pee ourselves. And so we have to embrace that we have to let our bellies be big and sometimes bloated and like not the cutest, have to relax our butts. You will see mom posture where they're carrying a baby and their just butt is totally tucked under. And that's 100% a sign of pelvic floor dysfunction, because their butt, if your butt's clenched, if your belly's sucked in, you're clenching your pelvic floor. And then when you get a load, like a movement or activity or a pressure or sneeze, your pelvic floor is going to fail. So I think the length piece is so important. And so Kegels are really great in that they can help us understand, where are we on that elevator? Are we on the bottom floor? Can we go to the top? Can we come back down? Because we need to be able to do all of that. When we add weights, we can really strengthen and hypertrophy the muscle. Kind of like if I was just doing a band bicep curl forever, like I probably wouldn't actually get a bicep. But if I really lifted like a 15 or 20 pound, I could really get some guns on me. So that's the same thing. We can hypertrophy. And so we use Kegel weights and biofeedback and stuff like that, especially with older populations, because they start to have muscle atrophy. So they literally have thinning of the vaginal walls. They get prolapse, they get more incontinence. So we can definitely build hypertrophy or bigger muscles with Kegel weights. But for the most part, if someone is squeezing their pelvic floor all day, we add a weight in there, they're just going to be working even harder, and it's probably going to make their symptoms worse. So the bottom line is, if you're doing Kegels, if you're doing Kegel weights and it's not making things better, then I would see somebody. It could be making it better for you. It really depends. And then the other piece is that, a lot of people can have tightness without having pain. We get to a point of tightness that then causes pain. But I assess a lot of pelvic floors where I can sense that there's tone and tension and resistance, but they don't actually have pain. Pain will come later if they don't get treatment and things like that. So know that
you're talking about like preventative measures. Like you're like, this is like the before step, where like, if you keep down this route, we're beyond preventative and now we're actually having to do the deep work on the problem.
Right. So 4 tips. This is just a really, really quick tip for everybody. When you breathe, your pelvic floor is going to move. So when we breathe in, both our diaphragm and the pelvic floor, the 2 trampolines, are going to go down. And as we exhale, they're going to come back up. So practicing belly breathing, practicing diaphragmatic breathing in like a child's pose or happy baby or a goblet squat, a deep squat, that is one of the best things you can do for your pelvic floor. So I try to implement it into my day. When I feed my dogs, I'm in a deep squat. I do like 3 breaths. We don't have time to be like laying on the floor all day and breathing. Like nobody has time for that. So just fit it into your day, find 3 seconds to take 3 deep breaths. And that is a huge, huge help for your pelvic floor.
This is also good for penis owners because I have friends that have penises that do I don't like to call it the goddess squat for them. They call it like the horseman squat is what I've heard it called, where it's basically doing the same function.
You're like trying to get your genitals as low to the ground with your legs
and
wide,
you're holding
you're still standing on your feet. Yeah. Okay.
So whatever genitals you're rocking, this is a position that pretend you're shitting in a hole in India, which I've done before. Amy's done before.
Thailand, same thing. Yeah.
Thailand. So it's sort of like that, but nothing has to come out of your butthole.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard this in other terms too, of like the way of, it's almost like a deeper connection with the earth too. And we're not trying to get too gems and crystals, but like, yeah, there's like a deep releasing, and that might feel awkward. We're like, oh wow, I'm just like really opening my genitals up towards the ground as much as possible. But it's actually, I've found it really powerful. Powerful.
Yeah. And just to really touch on the hemorrhoids part, to go to the poop part.
Yeah, let's go to the hemorrhoids. Let's dive into hemorrhoids.
So
hemorrhoids
just with, poop in general. So we like, as much as, grounding yourself and like deep breathing and all sounds really nice and can feel good for you, if you're not into that, there's an anatomical reason why we're doing this. Both the trampolines, so we're getting the breath movement of the pelvic floor, but also we have a muscle that wraps around our rectum. It's basically like a slingshot. So here's our little rectum. And it causes our rectum to be in a bent position, which is really good because we don't leak poop very often and people hate leaking poop. So that's great. But when we sit on a toilet and we're just sitting straight up and down and we're trying to poop and we're trying to like strain and push our poop out, because that's what we've been taught, that muscle is still wrapped around. So your rectum is like this and your poo literally has to go around the corner and then come down.
It's like a maze.
So, exactly. And it's hard. It's hard to create that pressure, especially if you're having constipation, dry stools, or if you're having loose stools. Both are really hard to push out because you have to make more pressure. And pressure is the thing that causes, and strain can cause hemorrhoids. So for anybody with a pelvic floor, which is everyone, should have a squatty potty in their home that they can use, or they should be able to like put their feet up on the bathtub if they have a small bathroom, whatever it is. But the squatty potty, what it does is it gets knees higher than hips, rectum goes straight, so poo can just fall straight down. We don't even have to push or strain or anything. So there's an anatomical reason for why people are squatting to poop. And it's exactly the same thing. It helps the pelvic floor relax. So when you do that deep goblet squat and you do your 3 breaths, that's just helping the pelvic floor relax.
Here we are over in the Western world, being like, we're so advanced with our 9-inch toilets.
Look at us
yeah.
sitting, right?
Look at us, but we have constipation issues and blah, blah, blah. And then you go to India and we're like, oh my God, I have to squat over this thing. Be like, wow, it comes out so quickly. Or like when I go backpacking, and don't worry, everyone, I bring the shovel, I dig a hole, I bury it, I do the whole thing. I pack my teepee. I'm doing that whole environmental thing. But I love pooping out in the woods. And because also my body naturally gets that posture of, I know this is, we're talking about pooping, but we're talking about hemorrhoids. It's like the actual posture that actually allows things to move the way as they should, which in turn, I think, so I guess that would be a question for you about hemorrhoids. The main reasons why people have hemorrhoids, one is the straining with constipation. Childbirth, I know, can cause this too. So I guess this will be a 2-part question.
Pushing out hard poops,
especially in these positions that aren't the most helpful. So for folks who have hemorrhoids, can they still enjoy anal sex? And if so, what are some of the ways to make it pleasurable?
And how do you know when you have hemorrhoids? Because I've had people ask me and I'm like, I don't want to look at your butthole. I will, but I'll
look
at
it. Send them to
Call
me.
Dr. Meredith.
Send them to Meredith. Yeah, send them to Meredith, actually.
Okay. I have patients who they tell me that their doctor didn't actually look at they're like, they didn't look at my hemorrhoids because they didn't actually have me spread my cheeks. So they'll bend over for me and spread the cheeks so I can really see them. So I assess hemorrhoids in a laying down on your belly position so that the butt actually moves out of the way so we can actually see what's happening. And the thing is that hemorrhoids can be two things. They're veins. They're enlarged, inflamed veins of your bum area that can either be internal or external. So if they're internal, you won't see them, but they often, and sometimes they're painless. It just depends. But you may have a harder time passing stool. You may not have a long sausage log of a stool, but stool consistency is one of the most important things to help healthy, happy pelvic floor. So squatty potty is number 1, stool consistency is number 2. So if you are too dry and hard constipated little deer pellets in the toilet every day, then it's really hard to pass those out. And if you're on the really wet side, diarrhea side, it's really hard. So there's ways that we can change diet. We can add supplements. We can just drink enough water. Like there's a lot of options, but that's something you can talk to a pelvic PT about. That's something you can talk to your doctor about, nutritionist, but it should be a long sausage log most of the time. Sometimes we eat Taco Bell and then it's like, oh, who knows? But we can just try our best to get that consistency. That will help prevent the hemorrhoids from flaring up. So hemorrhoids can kind of flare at different times because you had a hard stool or because you were straining. So if you're in a good position on the toilet, you don't have a hard stool, that's going to help. If you have the external hemorrhoids, you can see them. They might not look great to you. You can get them removed surgically if you want to. But most of the time, if you do conservative treatment, whether it's with a colorectal specialist or with a pelvic PT, we can release the external anal sphincter so it just has enough movement. And that's something I teach my patients to do before bowel movement. So they literally like lube up their sweet little thumb. You don't need any tools. You've got it on your hand. You stick it in there and you just gently press around and give that external anal sphincter a stretch. And I'm only going in like that much. And
it's about an inch on her finger, y'all.
Just the first knuckle on my thumb.
Well lubed, trim nails.
Exactly. Yeah, you can see my nails are very short. I'm a PT, pelvic PT, but you just are inserting in just enough to release that. And people can do that before bowel movements. And sometimes the external hemorrhoids will actually kind of retreat back in if we treat them. So hemorrhoids are not like a forever thing. A lot of times people get them flared up and then they go away and then they flare up again because they're just swollen veins. So if you're seeing anything external, one is to look at it. I have all of my patients take pictures down there, look, do an exploration time where they're just in front of a mirror. But the thing is, especially if you're having a baby, if you've never looked at your pelvic floor, you're going to be terrified to look at it after, so just know your own anatomy, whoever you are, whatever gender you are, understand your body so that if something isn't right, you know what's not working. If you've never looked down there, then when you go to the doctor and they're like, well, is this your normal? You're like, I don't know. Penis owners have it a little bit easier because it's easier to see their external genitalia, but we have enough technology and mirrors and all the things to be able to get a good idea of what's happening down there. And if you know you're normal, then you can know if something is coming back up. Other tips for hemorrhoids are tuck swipes. So tuck swipes are just these, let's come in a little circle thing, but they're just witch hazel wipes. So you could also just buy witch hazel and put it on a cotton pad, but it's just kind of a little bit of a drying agent. You can just tap it on. You want to tap it. You don't want to rub. And then just avoiding too much wiping. We as Americans are like, wrap our whole hand in toilet paper and then
get a bidet. Is like bidets would be more helpful.
Bidets are great.
Yeah. They have the toilet top bidets. My
attachment.
My housemate that lives in the same property has one, and they're amazing. They plug in, so you have to have an outlet near your toilet seat, and they dry. You actually use less toilet paper, and then you can they deodorize, which I'm not into. However, they do have a fan, so it's not the old school bidets from France, circa 1800. It's actually one that is a little bit more tech. And they have them at Costco, and I think they are kind of like
this advertisement not sponsored by Costco.
This brought to you by Costco.
Tushy bidet plate is like just an attachment one you can get, and they're only like $70, maybe $100. I don't know, but they're not bad. But yeah, bidets can really help, and then just understanding that we want to avoid pressure situations. So not holding our breath when we pick up our kids or we wrestle or we weight lift or whatever we're doing. It's amazing. It stabilizes you. It helps you build strength. And so we hold our breath and that pressure goes straight down onto your pelvic floor. And then you get more hemorrhoids, straining on the toilet, more hemorrhoids. So understanding that it's probably due to a past, toileting habit that you had, but that can change. I always tell people a poop should be like meditative. Like you should be like in your zone. You've got your squatty potty. You're just breathing, and the poo, if you've got good stool consistency, it's just going to like magically land in the toilet, and then you're going to go on with your day. It shouldn't be like,
what about like those poops that are like, oh, that felt so good. Like those ones too.
What about the non-wiping poops?
Oh, the queen swipe. Yeah. Queen swipe.
That's good.
That's a magic.
Yeah.
That's like good gut biome.
That's a real rarity for this one.
Sex
right
and
here.
poop, everyone.
Right. There's a lot of diet stuff to change it. So just understand where you are. You can look up the Bristol stool chart. It's like pictures of poop. You want to be right in the middle. Type 4.
Cartoons or actual pictures?
No, just cartoons. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Good. I was like,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, good. I was like, I'll do better with
like,
cartoons. I don't need to see
it's
people's
like when you
shit.
look up like herpes or something, you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? It's like shows you the worst
Yeah.
outbreaks
Right.
possible. Look, this is so much useful information. So just before we ask you this last question, which April will invite you to share more about yourself, I just wanted to clarify. So people can have enjoyable anal sex or through penetration, touch, etc. And there's these other things to take into account that can be healing processes before you go down that route or during. And I imagine a lot of slowness and gentleness and things. But
and
it's
would
not
the thumb trick help with anal sex too for folks?
Absolutely.
That have hemorrhoids?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know you guys have talked about bearing down before with anal on the podcast. And just so you know, a bearing down is a forced lengthening of the pelvic floor. So that's why it helps. We don't want to be doing a lot of bearing down like on a day-to-day, like, because it can cause straining and more of the same issues. But just a gentle, while you're doing an exhale, bearing down will allow the pelvic floor and the rectum to open up. So when I do rectal exams, I do the same thing. I say, okay, you're going to gently bear down on an exhale. We're just going to slide our finger in. And anal rectal exams are really not comfortable for most people because they're usually getting it because they're having some kind of pain. But once we get past that external anal sphincter and we release all of that, so just the first knuckle of your thumb inside and pushing in all the directions, you'll find that there's an area of tension on one spot. You're just going to hold on to it and you're going to breathe, take yourself to your happy place. You could even do a Kegel and relax it. And then you just let it go. And then you should have nicer poop. You should have better anal sex. You should have less hemorrhoid issues, because if you have hemorrhoids, again, they can reduce. So if we treat it, they might retreat back in, and then we have less issues. So
do you recommend topicals that are the over the counter topicals to help with that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
there are a couple. Anusol is one, preparation H. I mean, there's a lot of different things. I would, as a PT, I'm not allowed to recommend any specific things. So I give
Are they more numbing? Is that what they do? Are they more a numbing agent or are they? Yeah.
So they help with pain. So don't use those before anal sex, everyone.
Yeah, because for us, like we really do. We worked in sex shops. And so we really don't stand by taking like, a mouth spray that will numb your throat for oral sex or an anal something that will numb your ass for anal sex, because now you're bypassing the actual messages in your body.
But for pain, if you're experiencing pain with hemorrhoids, it may be a topical treatment.
Yeah, I guess as long as you can still feel the yeses and nos and I need to slow down, then that would make sense.
And there's also lubrication. Desert Harvest has a lubrication with like 4% lidocaine in it that we can use because it's just over the counter. It's not like a prescription that we can use for that kind of stuff. I tend to clinically use CBD lube if I have someone with pain, and that's usually enough. And then we're able to just release everything that's tight and then they feel better. But it's amazing how we can carry so much tension in the front of our pelvic floor. So if you're seeing a pelvic floor PT for bowel stuff, that doesn't mean they're going to do a rectal exam. It's only if we treat everything in the front vaginally and then we still aren't getting what we need that we would do the rectal exam. But I had a lady, she's been having painful bowel movements for 9 months. Her naturopath thought she had a parasite. It was like crazy. All we did was release her pelvic floor through her vagina. And she texted me and said, I had the best pain-free bowel movement. It was as soon as you left. It was amazing. So
Awesome.
those are the texts that I get. Like, I inserted a tampon and it didn't hurt. And then they're like, wait, is this Meredith?
Yeah, this is amazing though. This is just like such simple things. Like who's teaching this in like your health ed class or
Nobody.
even like, it's just not really happening. Even your GP, going to your daily doctor that you see, they're not checking in like, so your bowels, your poops, your hemorrhoids, how you're
and take stool softeners.
And granted, I mean, I've had shout out to Remy Paye, who has been on our show, my nurse practitioner, who actually is not going to be mine because she's moving on to greener pastures, but love her to death. She she did an STI STD episode that's been monumental, and she does a really in-depth check with those things. And there's a reason why we have professionals with all these areas, right? Some people have a general a GP, and then they go see a pelvic horse specialist, a pelvic floor specialist, and then a sex therapist, and because you have your whole team of healers, and so that's important. And I really love what you have to share. So I'm gonna let you bring on.
So
this next
thank
piece.
you for letting me. She's so sweet. So in closing, for all of those folks listening out there, even if whether you have pelvic floor issues or you don't know if you do, or you want to be preventative, and or you're having these bowel movements that are painful, and or you had a child and things aren't functioning differently than they were before, learn your anatomy. I learned about that from you, Dr. Meredith. Also, go to the folks like Amy was speaking to that have specializations in these fields, that are experts, that can give you an assessment. You can give yourself the assessment. And if you want to work with someone like Dr. Meredith Brezinski, I want you to tell everyone where you are, because I think most of these things have to be in person, I'm assuming. But what are your other offerings, your websites, and any social links, or anywhere that people can go to find more resources about these topics that we spoke to?
Absolutely. So first, with me, I'm in Portland, Oregon, and I treat actually in homes. So I do all of my sessions in my patients' homes. And so I'm fully mobile. I take my car, my table, my sheets, my lube, all that stuff, and I come to you. And a lot of it is because I do work with a lot of parents, and they're busy, they don't have time. And so being able to just have that hour slot where it's just me in their house for an hour, then I leave, they don't have to get a babysitter, all of that. Is really, really nice. My company, so I'm the director of pelvic health for my larger company, and we're actually nationwide. So we have pelvic PTs across the country. So if you go to conciergephysicaltherapist.com, you can find, we don't have every state yet, but eventually, hopefully we will. We have pelvic PTs in DC and in Denver and in Ohio. We've got people all over the place. So if you can't find a PT through us, and we all treat in home, so we all come to you, and with pelvic PT, because it's so vulnerable, it's hard to say like, my vagina is broken and I don't know what's happening to a random stranger. So when we come to you, then it just makes it a lot more comfortable, and people feel so much safer in their homes, and we're able to see you for less visits. There's just so much more progress that happens more quickly. But if you can't find one of us, then you can go to pelvicrehab.com, and you can search any area, and you can see a list of pelvic PTs with bios and pictures of them and their experience and their courses that they've taken. So there's not enough of us yet. There just is so much pelvic health care that has completely fallen off for people. And I treat people in their 60s and 70s who are still peeing when they had their baby at 25. And that's crazy, and it sucks, and it shouldn't be that way. So be preventative, think about your pelvic floor, understand that it can change so many aspects of your life. It's not just sex, it's not just bowel, it's not just bladder, it's everything. It's your quality of life. And that can just make such a difference. And then also know that if you can't find somebody, that there's a lot of free information on Instagram and social media. So my Instagram is Dr.Meredith Brezinski PT. And I do videos about how to poop, and like some sex positions, and like how to sleep, and how to hold your baby right, and all the things. And I'm not the only one. I am the least talented pelvic PT on Instagram. So there's a lot of other people out there. So if you go to who I follow, you can see lots of really, really cool information. So lots of free stuff out there. So just, search #pelvic health, #pelvic floor physical therapy. All that stuff will get you a lot of really cool people sharing some really cool stuff.
And where are you located?
That's Portland.
I'm
right?
in Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
Okay.
So I also treat in Vancouver, Washington as well. So I just kind of do all PDX Metro. And then, like I said, we just have PTs all over the place, and we're constantly adding. So we just got a new PT in Miami. So there's lots of places where you can find really quality care. If you're looking for a pelvic PT, number one, make sure they're seeing you for a full hour. Make sure that you're you're going to see the same PT the whole time. You don't want to be switching with different providers. That's super weird. And then make sure that they are able to really assess your whole body. If they only treat your pelvic floor and they don't look at your feet and your neck and your torso and your butt and like all the other pieces, then they're probably not doing the best for you. I would just say, if you aren't better in 3 to 5 sessions, find a new pelvic PT or find me on Instagram and I'll help you find one.
That's why it's important to know your shit. No.
Yeah. That was a good one, Chip.
Thanks.
In more ways than one.
In all the ways. Well, thank you, Dr. Meredith Brezinski, for sharing all of this. Yeah, this was incredible, not only for the folks that have asked me about some of the things that you were speaking to, but for my future self, the future people out there that may or may not be affected. I think anyone in their lifetime may feel some pelvic floor shifts, and whether or not you're aware, now you have some additional tools and places to go and some thumbs to stick up your butt if you want to.
Trim nails, Uber
trim your
Lube.
nails. And I just want to say thank you for sharing all of that with us. And
absolutely.
we hope
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yes. And she's in Maui, everyone. So share.
Currently on
she's
Aloha.
on holiday in Maui, but
Currently
thank
on
you.
vacation.
Enjoy your vacation, and
Thank
hopefully
you.
brought some. Oh, you did bring your Uber Lube. You showed us. So
I've got, I've
with
got
your
Uber
partner.
Lube. I've got all the things.
Never travels. Never go anywhere without Uber Lube. Everyone, ever.
It's true.
Exactly.
Especially when you're in Maui if there's humidity, you can use it
Oh, for the
your
hair
hair.
frizzies.
Yes. This
Oh,
is not
yeah.
even a commercial for that, but I brought it for that, just for that. I was not even, I was solo, and I was not going to have sex with anyone, and I brought it for my skin and my hair. So boom, thank you.
Five birds, one stone. Not a great analogy because that's about death, but that's okay. Moving on. Let's close this one out.
Well,
Chip.
we are closing this with saying aloha to you, Meredith, and to all of our beautiful listeners, wherever you are in the world, in the States, in Canada, wherever you're coming from. We love you. And I want to invite you right now, just review us on iTunes. 5 stars. We read every single review, every single one we read. And if it's bad, Amy reads it, and then she sort of has to. So don't give us a bad one. That's the point. Because I cry. I lose sleep over it because I want to help everyone.
But I'm like, Chip, what kind of mood are you in before I share this
I
with
don't
you?
want to say
Well, no, if you give us a bad one, which we're not saying to do it, but we'll do a funny thing on Instagram where we'll kind of make fun of your bad
don't
review.
do it. Don't do it.
Only 5 stars.
So coming back to the invitation, it's a really simple process, and it just helps more people in the world. All it does is help people find more folks that are experts like Dr. Meredith Brezinski and all of the beautiful humans that are on the show as the experts out there to help save the human world one pelvic floor at a time. All right, y'all. We will see you next Tuesday for another episode of Shameless Sex. Ciao for now.